Here we are, this is the new HP Proliant MicroServer. As you can see, quite a small form factor, as the name suggests. On the right hand side there, you've got four USB 2 slots, you've got an on-off power button, and you've got two status activity lights there. So one for the disk on the right hand side, and one for the network on the right hand side. So jet black in colour, very similar to the G5 and G6 models, well, more so the G6 models actually of Proliants. You have a key on the front here for securing access to the front, so let's open that up. So feel of the plastic and everything, not too bad actually. Doesn't feel too cheap or nasty or anything. It's quite a decent sturdy construction. So opening it up, as you can see, this has been unused, so still got some of the packaging here. So within the front of the microserver here, as you can see, we've got four drive bays. So I know it's a question a lot of people had, was whether the microserver actually came with the disk caddies or not. So the answer to that is yes. And what you do get by default with the standard server when you buy it is a single 160 gigabyte 7200 RPM disk. So as you see, it's the caddy there. It's just a standard SATA disk that just sits inside there. So let's have a look. Let's just pull one of these other caddies out like so. So there we go, there's an empty one. So all you do is just populate it with a standard sort of commodity SATA hard disk. Screws go in the side like so, and then you insert it back in like so. So this server does have onboard RAID, nothing fancy though. It is all onboard. Apparently it's an AMD based RAID, so it'll either do RAID 0 or RAID 1. So unfortunately no RAID 5 there at all. As you can see, you could populate it with a maximum of 4 disks, but across those 4 you'd either be looking at striping across all 4 or a RAID 1 configuration. Other things on the inside here, as you can see, front right here we've got a internal USB port. So this USB port will come in particularly useful if you want to, for example, run VMware ESXi from a USB key. That said, I've still got to test the server to see whether it would be adequate for running ESXi and a handful of VMs on it. Reason being, the CPU on this is a laptop grade CPU, so it's an AMD, but it's only a dual core based CPU running around about, from memory, I think around about 1.2 or 1.3 gigahertz. So nothing too high powered there. But then again, in fairness, it really depends what you want to be running in your home lab. In defense of HP, the server isn't intended as a virtualization server at all. It is intended as a server for small businesses up to 10 to 12 people. So, but it's really the home enthusiast or the work enthusiast, such as myself, who sees this great little form factor, and you can just really see that fitting in nicely in a lab environment. For not only for noise, obviously it's very quiet running, but also the power costs of running it also. Okay, so whether you can see this, there are actually just on the right hand side there are two DIMM modules that you can add. So you can add a maximum of 8 gigabytes into this microserver in total. So obviously to achieve that you need to put in 4 gigabyte DIMMs, which can be a little bit costly. So that is a bit of a downside with the server, unfortunately. But obviously over time the price of 4 gigabyte DIMMs will decrease. So you might be asking yourself, how do you actually get in to install that memory if you wanted to? So what you would do, you might see the two blue screws at the front here. It's a case of unscrewing those, and you've got this rather convenient handle just at the front, and it's just a case of pulling the system board out. So I'll do that now and show you what the system board looks like. After removing 6 cables in total from the system board, and then just gently sliding the system board out using the handle, and we have the 2 screws here that I pointed out earlier that need unscrewing as well, we get a clear view of the actual system board that makes up the heart of the Proliant microserver here. So as you see, you've got the CPU underneath this heatsink here, obviously passively cooled, relying on the fan round the back of the server to draw cold air over it to keep it cool. As I say, these are very low voltage laptop CPUs or CPU in here. It's a dual core, so it's not going to generate as much heat as your typical server would. So obviously, it doesn't have that requirement to have a fan placed over the top of it, or a larger heat sink, for example. So you've got a total of 2 DIMM sockets, memory DIMM sockets, taking DDR3 memory here. So you can insert 2 4GB DIMMs in here to give you a maximum of 8GB in total. Unfortunately, the cost of 4GB DIMMs at the moment is still a little bit on the high side. Yeah, if you were looking at wanting to ramp the memory up, it may cost you probably more than the server would at this point of time, or probably not far off. Over here, like I say, USB 2 socket, very useful for if you want to boot a operating system or a hypervisor off of a internal USB key. You've got the 2 slots there. You've got a 1x PCIe and a 16x. So you'd probably use that, for example, if you were to use it as a VMware ESXi lab server, you'd perhaps want to consider inserting a network, either a single port or a dual port network card, into one of those slots. Okay, right, I've just taken the 1GB DIMM that comes as standard with the microserver out and just populated the 2 DIMM sockets there with 4GB DIMMs, so that will give me a total of 8GB in total. The whole system board here is on a tray, as you can see, easily slides back in again, and then what we have, as mentioned previously, a total of 6 cables to reinsert back into the system board again. So it's not the type of thing that you'd want to do too often, and obviously not as easy access as a sort of a mini tower or a tower based server. So I'm just going to put all those cables back in, and then we'll take a look around the back. Right, we're now around the back of the microserver. As you can see, I've got the power supply on the right hand side, as you'd expect from an entry-level server, non-hot pluggable, but that's to be expected. Up here you've got a small slot for attaching a Kensington lock if you wanted to secure the server anywhere, and underneath there you'll see 2 PCIe slots. Now the interesting thing to note, you probably see the size of my hand here, they are half-height PCIe slots. As I mentioned before, one's a 1x PCIe and the other is a 16x. So you know, if you buy one of these, if you go out looking to buy a card, make sure that they've got the half-height fitting to actually fit into the small server here. So around the back here you've got an eSATA port. Now that's an interesting addition. That is particularly good in my opinion. So that's sort of a relatively high-speed disk breakout out of the back. If you're a small business, for example, you may have a portable hard disk or similar here for backups. Okay, next to that is a single gigabit Ethernet port, as I mentioned earlier. If you were going to run this as a lab server, assuming that the CPUs can handle that, the workloads you want to run on there, you may want to look at adding either a single or a dual port gigabit Ethernet PCIe based card into the server as well. Just below the gigabit socket there as well, you've got an additional 2 USB ports. You've also got video as well. And as mentioned before also, in your typical setup, that would be, you know, keyboard, mouse and video. So any other sort of USB based devices or components you'd want to attach, you'd have to connect them to one of the 4 ports around the front of the server, which is a little bit of an inconvenience. It could have done with a couple more ports around the back, in my opinion. As you can see, a rather sizable fan here around the back, silent running, you'll be pleased to know, but that single fan there does cool the entire server. So that not only pulls cold air across the drives to keep them cool, but also pulls cold air over the CPU as well. You saw the heatsink previously on that, so everything relies on this guy here to keep it all nice and cool. The bag that you see there, that just held the key for around the front. Other thing you'll see on the top here is a screw. All that purely does is it just releases. Let's see whether we can pull the top off here. Let's open up the door like so. That just comes off the front like so. Comes off quite easily once you open the door, and you will see there is a bay there to insert a a CD or DVD drive. Now, one interesting thing you should note if you are in the market or you think you'd like one of these servers is that by default it does not come with a DVD or CD drive at all. So you'd need to purchase your own drive to insert in there. Yeah, a little bit disappointed with that. You know, I know it's an entry-level server. There we go. That's the blanking plate on the front here. But even at the price you pay for one of these, you'd kind of expect a CD or DVD drive as standard, especially since it's targeted at the small business market as well, because you know, most small businesses, they may not have an IT person, for example, and it might be a case, you know, that if they've bought a Small Business Server 2008, for example, you know, your average person would know how to install it, but obviously they'd need a CD or DVD drive to do that, and obviously Microsoft don't provide any of their operating systems, at least easily, or via retail channels on USB key at all. So the only option you have got is to actually purchase a CD or DVD drive. So yeah, that's it's not a biggie, but you know, I think HP could have been big and maybe thrown in a CD or DVD drive on that one. So that concludes the hands-on preview or review rather on the new HP MicroServer. So I hope it's been of use. Like I say, build quality, actually quite impressed, quite good actually. Plastic's got a good feel to it, definitely not cheap at all, and I look forward to installing both VMware ESXi on it, and as well as that Microsoft Windows Server 2008 straight onto the hardware to see how it performs.